Not the silence of peace, but the silence of ending, of ash settling, of waves lapping against shores that no longer remember the footfalls of giants. 66 million years ago, the world ended. Not all at once. Not in the merciful way stories sometimes promise, but in fire and darkness, in months that stretched into years where the sun forgot how to shine. The asteroid that struck the Yucatan Peninsula released energy equivalent to 10 billion Hiroshima bombs. The impact crater, over 100 miles wide, sent shockwaves rippling through the Earth's crust. Megatsunamis, some rising over 300 feet high, scoured coastlines thousands of miles away. Molten rock rained from the sky. Wildfires consumed entire continents. And then came the darkness. Dust and sulfur choked the atmosphere, blocking out the sun for years. Temperatures plummeted. Photosynthesis ceased. The great food chains that had sustained life for millions of years collapsed link by link, from the smallest plankton to the mightiest Tyrannosaurus. On land, 75% of all species vanished. The dinosaurs, those magnificent titans who had ruled for 160 million years, were gone. The forests burned. The plains fell silent. But beneath the waves, something different was happening. The oceans, too, suffered. Marine reptiles that had terrorized these waters, the mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, the last of the great sea predators, they too succumbed. Ammonites, those spiral-shelled mariners that had sailed Earth's seas for 350 million years, disappeared forever. Entire reef ecosystems dissolved as the chemistry of the ocean itself turned hostile. Yet the ocean is patient. The ocean is deep. And in that depth, in the cold darkness where the catastrophe above seemed like a distant nightmare, life clung on. Small sharks, ancient fish, primitive creatures we would barely recognize today, huddling in the deep places, sustained by chemosynthetic bacteria, by marine snow drifting down from above, by the stubborn, inexplicable will of life to continue. This is not the story you know. This is not the tale of how mammals inherited the earth. This is the story of how the oceans became an empire, of how, in the absence of the terrible lizards, the seas gave birth to monsters that would have made a Tyrannosaurus tremble, of predators so massive, so perfectly evolved for killing, that they would reign supreme for 40 million years. This is the story of when the oceans ruled the earth. The first 1,000 years after the impact were years of darkness. Imagine a world where the surface of the ocean receives no sunlight, where the phytoplankton, those microscopic plants that form the foundation of all marine life, cannot photosynthesize, where the great cycles of energy that drive oceanic ecosystems simply stop. Scientists call this the Cretaceous-Paleogene boundary, or KPG boundary. Geologists can find it in rock layers worldwide, a thin band of clay enriched with iridium, an element rare on Earth but common in asteroids. This line in the stone is the gravestone of the Old World. But beneath that boundary, beneath the settling sediment and the dying plankton, something was stirring. The first survivors were the small and the adaptable. Sharks, those ancient mariners whose lineage stretches back 450 million years, proved their resilience once more. Species like the prehistoric cow shark and the crocodile shark, no larger than a human, scavenged in the darkness, their keen senses of smell leading them to the bounty of death that rained down from above. Deep-sea creatures, adapted to lightless environments, barely noticed the catastrophe. Hagfish, those eel-like scavengers, thrived on the abundance of dead matter. Nautiluses, distant cousins of the extinct ammonites, survived in their perfect spiral shells, rising from the depths to reclaim the shallower waters. And then, slowly, the sky began to clear. It took thousands of years, but gradually, sunlight returned. The ocean, that vast blue lung of the planet, began to breathe again. Phytoplankton bloomed in unprecedented numbers, turning the seas green with life. Zooplankton followed, then small fish, then larger fish. The food chain was rebuilding itself. But this time, the architects of the new order would not be reptiles. The great mosasaurs were gone. The plesiosaurs vanished. For the first time in 200 million years, the oceans had no apex predators larger than 20 feet. It was a vacuum waiting to be filled. The Paleocene epoch had begun, the first chapter of the age of mammals. On land, small furry creatures were beginning their unlikely rise to dominance. But in the oceans, an even more remarkable transformation was about to unfold. In the shallow waters and estuaries where land met sea, certain mammals were discovering an untapped resource. The water was rich with fish. Competition was minimal. And for those willing to adapt, to change, to surrender their terrestrial heritage for an aquatic future, the possibilities were endless. This is where our story truly begins. 60 million years ago, somewhere along the coasts of what we now call Pakistan and India, a small mammal was learning to swim. Pakicetus, paleontologists would name it, though the name whale seems almost absurd for this creature. It looked more like a wolf with a taste for seafood, no larger than a large dog, with hooves on its feet and a long snout filled with sharp teeth. But Pakicetus spent its days hunting in shallow streams and coastal waters, and in doing so, it was taking the first steps on a journey that would reshape the oceans forever. Evolution does not plan. It does not have goals or destinations, but it rewards those who find opportunity in empty niches. And the post-extinction oceans were full of niches waiting to be filled. Within just a few million years, the descendants of creatures like Pakicetus had committed fully to aquatic life. Ambulocetus, the walking whale, emerged around 50 million years ago. 9 feet long and weighing nearly 500 pounds, it moved like a crocodile, ambushing prey from the water's edge. Its eyes sat high on its skull, allowing it to see while mostly submerged. Its powerful tail propelled it through the water with undulating movements. The transformation was accelerating. By 45 million years ago, during the Middle Eocene epoch, the first true whales had appeared. These were not the gentle giants we know today, filtering krill through baleen plates. These were monsters, predators, the new apex hunters of a world still finding its balance. Basilosaurus, the king lizard whale, though it was no lizard at all. Picture a serpent the length of a school bus, 60 feet of muscle and bone, with a body as thick as an oil barrel and a tail that could have wrapped around a car. Basilosaurus weighed up to 15 tons and ruled the Eocene seas with absolute authority. But it was the skull that revealed its true nature. 3 feet long, bristling with teeth of different shapes and sizes, sharp, conical teeth at the front for gripping, and massive, serrated teeth further back for cutting and tearing. These were the teeth of a predator that killed large prey. Basilosaurus hunted other whales, giant fish, sharks, anything that moved in its domain. Its eyes faced forward, giving it binocular vision, the mark of a hunter that needs to judge distance accurately. Its brain was relatively large, suggesting intelligence, social behavior, perhaps even the beginning of the complex communication systems that modern whales possess. And strangest of all, buried deep in its body, were tiny vestigial hind legs. Legs just 12 inches long, complete with knees and toes, remnants of its terrestrial ancestry. These legs served no purpose, could not support weight, could not propel it through water. They were evolutionary echoes, whispers of a past life on land. Basilosaurus hunted in the warm, shallow seas that covered much of North Africa, North America, and the Middle East. Fossils have been found in what is now the Egyptian desert, in rock formations that were once ancient seabeds. Imagine, the Sahara, that vast ocean of sand, was once home to an ocean of water, and in that water swam creatures that would dwarf any terrestrial predator of their time. But Basilosaurus did not hunt alone in these ancient seas. Dorodon, a smaller relative measuring 15 feet, traveled in pods through the Eocene waters. These were the prey that Basilosaurus often hunted. Evidence of bite marks matching Basilosaurus teeth have been found on Dorodon fossils, a 35-million-year-old crime scene preserved in stone. And there were sharks. Always, there were sharks. While the great mosasaurs had vanished, sharks had endured the extinction with barely a pause. Otodus obliquus, an early relative of the Megalodon, prowled these warm waters, growing to 30 feet in length. Its teeth, triangular and serrated, could slice through flesh and bone with equal ease. The stage was set. The players were taking their positions. But the true age of ocean monsters was still to come. For now, the Eocene seas were warm, productive, and relatively stable. But nothing lasts forever. The climate was beginning to shift, and with it, the very nature of the oceans would transform. The Antarctica we know today, a frozen wasteland of ice and wind, did not yet exist. 40 million years ago, Antarctica was covered in temperate forests, but continental drift was slowly isolating it at the bottom of the world, and ocean currents were beginning to change. The stage was being set for the rise of the true giants. 35 million years ago, as the Eocene gave way to the Oligocene epoch, the Earth entered a period of dramatic cooling. The Antarctic circumpolar current formed as Australia finally separated from Antarctica, creating a river of cold water that circled the southern continent, isolating it from warmer tropical waters. Ice began to accumulate at the South Pole for the first time in millions of years. Sea levels dropped. Ocean temperatures plummeted. This cooling had profound effects on marine life. The warm, shallow seas of the Eocene began to recede. Productivity shifted toward the poles, where cold, nutrient-rich waters brought by new current systems created explosion of life. Whales had to adapt or perish. Many species went extinct, but those that survived entered a golden age. The baleen whales emerged during this period, developing the remarkable filter feeding system that would allow them to exploit the vast abundance of krill and small fish in polar waters. But we're not here to talk about filter feeders. We're here to talk about killers. The toothed whales, the odontocetes, were diversifying rapidly, evolving into an array of forms and sizes. Some became dolphins, sleek and social. Others became porpoises, compact and efficient. And some became apex predators of unprecedented size and ferocity. 28 million years ago, off the coast of what is now Peru, a new predator appeared in the fossil record. Livyatan melvillei, named after the biblical sea monster Leviathan and Herman Melville, author of Moby Dick. Livyatan was a sperm whale unlike any alive today. Modern sperm whales are the largest toothed predators on Earth, but they hunt primarily squid in the deep ocean, and their teeth are small, almost vestigial. Livyatan hunted whales, and it had the teeth to prove it. 57 feet long, weighing an estimated 60 tons, Livyatan possessed the largest functional teeth of any known animal, 14 inches long and as thick as a man's forearm. Both the upper and lower jaws were lined with these massive teeth, interlocking like a bear trap designed by a nightmare. The skull alone was 10 feet long, with a jaw that could open wide enough to swallow an adult human whole. But Livyatan didn't hunt humans. We wouldn't exist for another 27 million years. It hunted baleen whales, smaller toothed whales, large sharks, anything it could catch in the productive waters of the ancient Pacific. Its brain was large and complex, contained within a massive spermaceti organ, the same oil-filled structure that modern sperm whales use for echolocation and deep diving. Livyatan could hunt by sound, painting pictures of its prey with clicks and echoes, hunting in darkness or murky water with perfect precision. But Livyatan, terrifying as it was not the apex predator of its time. Because in these same waters, growing larger with each passing generation, was a shark that would become synonymous with prehistoric terror. Otodus megalodon. The name means giant tooth, and it is no exaggeration. Megalodon teeth regularly measure 6 inches in length, with the largest specimens exceeding 7 inches. To put that in perspective, a great white shark's tooth is typically 2 to 3 inches long. But Megalodon was not simply a scaled-up great white. It was something altogether more terrifying. Modern estimates, based on fossil teeth, vertebrae, in comparison with modern great whites, suggest Megalodon reached lengths of 50 to 60 feet, possibly even larger. Weight estimates range from 50 to 70 tons, similar to a sperm whale, but built for one purpose: killing. The bite force of Megalodon has been estimated at over 40,000 pounds per square inch, the most powerful bite of any creature that has ever lived. By comparison, a great white shark bites with about 4,000 pounds of force, and a T-Rex with about 12,000 pounds. Megalodon could bite clean through the skull of a whale. And this is exactly what it did. Fossil whale bones from the Miocene and Pliocene epochs, the time of Megalodon's dominance, bear the unmistakable marks of those massive teeth. Vertebrae sheared in half, ribs punctured, skulls with bite marks matching the spacing of Megalodon's jaws. These weren't scavenging bites on already dead animals. These were killing blows, delivered with precision to disable and destroy. Megalodon's hunting strategy, based on evidence from fossil wounds, involved targeting the flippers and tail of whales, disabling them before moving in for the kill. A single bite to a whale's pectoral fin would render it unable to swim effectively, making it easy prey for a patient predator. But Megalodon didn't hunt alone in these oceans. The Miocene epoch, spanning from 23 to 5 million years ago, was perhaps the most diverse period for marine mammals in Earth's history. Dozens of whale species, seal species, and other marine mammals filled every available niche. The oceans teemed with life, from the smallest krill to the largest whales. Giant penguins, standing over 6 feet tall, hunted fish in the southern oceans. These were not the cute, waddling penguins we know today, but powerful swimmers with spear-like beaks, apex predators in their own right in subantarctic waters. Enormous sea turtles, measuring 12 feet from beak to tail, grazed on seagrass meadows that carpeted shallow tropical seas. And everywhere, in every ocean, Megalodon patrolled, an apex predator with no equal. For 15 million years, Megalodon was the undisputed ruler of the seas. Generation after generation, it refined its killing techniques, grew larger, spread to every ocean on Earth. From the Arctic to Antarctica, from shallow coastal waters to the deep ocean, Megalodon hunted. But it was not alone at the top of the food chain. Imagine an ocean where the apex predators are not simply large, but are engaged in an evolutionary arms race that pushes the very limits of what flesh and bone can achieve. 10 million years ago, during the late Miocene, the oceans were a battleground. On one side, Megalodon, the largest shark that has ever lived, a killing machine perfected over millions of years of evolution, capable of hunting the largest prey in the ocean. On the other, Livyatan and its relatives, massive toothed whales with intelligence, echolocation, social hunting strategies, and teeth that could pierce through blubber and bone. These were not occasional encounters. These were two dynasties of apex predators competing for the same resources, large baleen whales, which by this time had evolved into giants themselves in response to the abundance of polar krill. Fossil evidence suggests these two predators may have even hunted the same individual whales. Whale fossils from the Pisco Formation in Peru, one of the richest marine fossil deposits in the world, bear bite marks from both megalodon teeth and the teeth of large macroraptorial sperm whales like Livyatan. The question paleontologists still debate: who would win in a direct confrontation? Megalodon had size and the most powerful bite force in history. Its teeth could shear through nearly anything. Its hide was covered in tough, abrasive scales that made it difficult to wound. And it had no vital organs exposed. Everything was protected by thick skin and muscle. But Livyatan had advantages of its own. Intelligence, first and foremost. Modern sperm whales have the largest brains of any animal that has ever lived, and Livyatan's brain was likely comparable. It could strategize, remember, learn. It also had echolocation, allowing it to see in 3 dimensions using sound, to detect prey from miles away, to coordinate with other Livyatan in sophisticated hunting strategies. And crucially, it needed to breathe air. This seems like a disadvantage, but it meant Livyatan could not be drowned, could not be pulled into the deep the way Megalodon might pull a wounded whale. A fight between these two titans would have been brief, explosive, and devastating. Most likely, they avoided each other when possible. Apex predators rarely engage in fights to the death. The risk of injury is too great, even for the victor. Instead, they would have partitioned their hunting grounds, taken different prey when available, and clashed only when necessity demanded it. But they were not the only giants in these oceans. The baleen whales, those filter feeders that seem so gentle to us today, were also evolving into titans. By 10 million years ago, some species were approaching the sizes we see in modern blue whales. Animals over 80 feet long, weighing over 100 tons. These whales were not predators, but their sheer size made them formidable. An adult baleen whale in its prime was nearly immune to predation. Even Megalodon would have thought twice before attacking a healthy adult fin whale or gray whale. Instead, both Megalodon and Livyatan targeted the vulnerable: calves, sick adults, old individuals past their prime. This is the way of apex predators: maximize reward, minimize risk. The Miocene oceans were also home to extraordinary diversity and smaller marine predators. The ancestors of modern killer whales were emerging, medium-sized toothed whales with pack-hunting behaviors that allowed them to take down prey much larger than themselves. Giant pinnipeds, relatives of modern seals and sea lions, grew to enormous sizes. Pontolis magnus, a walrus relative, weighed over 2,000 pounds and had massive tusks for defense and foraging. And in the southern oceans, the last of the giant penguins were thriving. Kumamanu bice, which lived around 60 million years ago, stood over 5 feet tall and weighed nearly 350 pounds. Later species, like Anthropornis nordenskjoeldi from the Eocene, were nearly 6 feet tall. These were not the charming birds of modern Antarctica, but powerful pursuit predators that could stay underwater for extended periods, hunting fish and squid with ruthless efficiency. But even as these giants thrived, the world was changing again. Around 7 million years ago, the Isthmus of Panama began to form, separating the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. This seemingly small geographic change had profound effects on global ocean circulation, shutting down tropical currents that had kept the world warm. The Earth entered a period of cooling that would culminate in the Pleistocene ice ages. The golden age of ocean giants was approaching its end. 3 million years ago, the world entered the Pliocene epoch, and the ice was advancing. The Arctic Ocean froze over for the first time in millions of years. Glaciers crept down from the mountains, covering vast stretches of North America and Eurasia in ice thousands of feet thick. Sea levels dropped as water became locked in polar ice caps. The warm, productive coastal seas that had sustained the giant marine predators for millions of years began to disappear. Ocean temperatures dropped. Current patterns shifted. The abundance of prey that had made the Miocene a paradise for apex predators was diminishing. Megalodon, that supreme predator, faced a crisis. Its preferred prey, large baleen whales, were changing their behaviors. Many species were migrating to polar waters during feeding season, following the krill blooms that thrived in cold, nutrient-rich seas. But these polar waters were too cold for Megalodon. Like modern great white sharks, Megalodon required warmer water to maintain its metabolism, to keep its enormous body functioning. The fossil record shows Megalodon's range contracting, populations becoming isolated, genetic diversity declining. Nursery areas, shallow, warm coastal waters where young Megalodon grew to adulthood protected from other predators, were disappearing as sea levels dropped. And there was another problem: competition. Great white sharks, smaller and more adaptable than Megalodon, were thriving in these changing conditions. They could tolerate cooler water, could survive on smaller prey, could hunt in a wider range of habitats. Where Megalodon needed massive prey to sustain its enormous body, great whites could survive on seals, smaller whales, large fish. The macroraptorial sperm whales like Livyatan faced similar pressures. The giant baleen whales they hunted were becoming more difficult to catch as they spent more time in cold polar waters. Competition with killer whales, smaller, more social, more adaptable, was intensifying. Around 3.6 million years ago, Megalodon vanished from the fossil record. The exact cause of its extinction remains debated among paleontologists. Climate change certainly played a role. The loss of nursery habitats was likely critical. Competition with great white sharks and killer whales may have been the final blow. But the most likely explanation is that Megalodon simply became too specialized. In a changing world, generalists survive. Specialists, no matter how perfectly adapted to their niche, perish when that niche disappears. Livyatan and its relatives likely went extinct around the same time, for similar reasons. The age of giant predatory whales was over. The age of Megalodon was over. But the oceans were far from empty. 2 million years ago, the Pleistocene epoch began, and with it came the ice ages. Imagine oceans colder and more productive than any in the previous 60 million years. Imagine coastlines buried under glaciers, sea levels dropping by over 300 feet, exposing vast continental shelves. The ocean giants of the Miocene and Pliocene were gone, but new giants were rising to take their place. Blue whales, the largest animals ever to exist, were evolving their final form. Over 100 feet long, weighing over 200 tons, these filter-feeding leviathans exploited the superabundance of Antarctic krill that bloomed each summer in the southern oceans. Fin whales, the second largest animals on Earth, hunted in both hemispheres, their sleek bodies capable of speeds over 25 miles per hour, faster than any other whale their size. But the true apex predators of the Pleistocene oceans were not the largest animals. They were the smartest. Killer whales, orcas, emerged as the ocean's supreme hunters. 25 feet long and weighing up to 6 tons, killer whales seem small compared to Megalodon or Livyatan. But what they lack in individual size, they make up for in intelligence, social organization, and hunting sophistication. Killer whales hunt in pods, using coordinated strategies that are learned and passed down through generations. Culture, in the truest sense of the word. Different populations have different hunting techniques, different vocalizations, even different prey preferences. Some pods specialize in hunting fish, using echolocation and coordinated movements to herd salmon and herring into tight balls before stunning them with powerful tail slaps. Other pods hunt marine mammals, seals, sea lions, even other whales. They are capable of killing blue whales, the largest animals on Earth, by targeting calves and exhausting adults through relentless pursuit. Antarctic killer whales have developed a technique called wave washing, where they swim in formation to create waves that knock seals off ice floes into the water. Patagonian killer whales intentionally beach themselves to snatch sea lion pups from the shoreline, then wriggle back into the water, a technique so risky that it must be taught by experienced adults to youngsters. This is intelligence on a level that Megalodon, for all its size and power, never achieved. The Pleistocene seas were also home to enormous pinnipeds. Elephant seals, the largest seals alive today, can weigh up to 8,000 pounds. Their ancestors in the Pleistocene were even larger, hauling out on beaches from California to Antarctica. Walruses, with their magnificent tusks and blubbery bodies, thrived in Arctic waters, diving to the seafloor to feed on clams and other mollusks. And the great whales, blue, fin, humpback, right, bowhead, filled the oceans with their songs, their migrations, their immense presence. But something new was coming. Something that would change the oceans more dramatically than any extinction event, any climate shift, any evolutionary innovation. Humans. For most of the 66 million years since the asteroid, humans did not exist. When Basilosaurus hunted in the Eocene seas, our ancestors were small primates hiding in tropical forests. When Megalodon ruled the Miocene oceans, our ancestors were early apes, just beginning to walk upright on the plains of Africa. When the Pleistocene ice ages began, our species, Homo sapiens, had not yet evolved. We are newcomers to this planet, latecomers to a story that spans millions of years. But our impact has been swift and devastating. For most of human history, we feared the ocean. We built boats, yes, and fished coastal waters, but the deep sea remained alien and terrifying, the realm of monsters, of unknowable danger. Then, just a few hundred years ago, we developed the technology to hunt the ocean's giants. Industrial whaling, beginning in the 19th century, decimated whale populations worldwide. Blue whales, which once numbered in the hundreds of thousands, were reduced to just a few thousand individuals. Right whales, so named because they were the right whales to hunt, slow-moving, full of oil, floating when killed, were hunted to the brink of extinction. Humpback whales, gray whales, fin whales, sperm whales, all were slaughtered by the tens of thousands, their bodies rendered into oil, their baleen carved into corset stays and umbrella ribs. We killed more whales in 100 years than Megalodon killed in 15 million. We also transformed the ocean itself. Commercial fishing, using nets miles long and hooks by the millions, has removed 90% of large fish from the oceans. Coral reefs, which evolved over millions of years, are dying from warming waters and ocean acidification. Plastic pollution has created garbage patches larger than Texas. The ocean monsters that survived the asteroid, that adapted to ice ages and climate shifts, that evolved into forms more magnificent than any science fiction could imagine. These creatures are now facing their greatest challenge, us. But here is where our story takes an unexpected turn. Because in the last few decades, something remarkable has happened. We have begun to listen. In the depths of the ocean, where sunlight fades to blackness and pressure reaches crushing extremes, whales are singing. Humpback whales compose songs that last for hours, complex melodies that change year by year, that spread across ocean basins as whales learn from each other. These are the most complex non-human vocalizations known to science. Blue whales call to each other across thousands of miles, their low-frequency songs traveling through deep ocean channels, infrasound felt more than heard. Sperm whales, descendants of the line that produced Livyatan, dive to depths of over 6,000 feet, hunting giant squid in darkness so complete that eyes are useless. They see with sound, painting acoustic pictures of their prey, of each other, of the ocean itself. And they remember. Whales live long lives. Bowhead whales can live over 200 years, carrying memories of Arctic seas from before the Industrial Revolution. Killer whales learn from grandmothers who remember hunting grounds, prey behaviors, ice patterns from decades past. The ocean monsters of today are smaller than Megalodon, less terrifying in appearance than Basilosaurus, less alien than the mosasaurs that came before. But they are no less magnificent. They are the inheritors of a lineage that stretches back 66 million years, to a world drowned in ash and darkness, to the first survivors who refused to surrender. They are the proof that life does not simply endure, it transforms, adapts, becomes ever more complex and beautiful. And now, finally, we are beginning to protect them. Whaling bans, marine protected areas, international cooperation to reduce ship strikes and ocean noise. For the first time in centuries, whale populations are recovering. Humpback whales, once hunted to just a few thousand individuals, now number over 80,000. Blue whales are slowly increasing. Right whales remain critically endangered, but conservation efforts continue. We cannot undo the damage we have done. We cannot bring back the species we have driven to extinction. But we can choose a different future. The ocean that gave birth to the first life on Earth, that survived the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs, that watched the rise and fall of countless predators across millions of years. That ocean is still here. It is resilient. It is patient. It is deep. And in that depth, the descendants of Pachycetus and Ambulocetus, of Basilosaurus and Livyatan, continue their ancient dance. They hunt. They sing. They migrate across thousands of miles. They raise their young in waters that have known life for over 3 billion years. They ruled not the land, but the deep. And the deep remembers.